our district's YouTube page. Thank you, Ms. Avida, for providing the entertainment. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time. It's already 5:02. We're very excited for today's conversation. I'm very thankful for a partnership with CareSpace and our presenter today, Ines Castillo. You've met her a couple of times. She's given us the gift of many presentations this year and last year as well. Today's presentation is on, well, the title's in front of you, is Does My Child's Emotional Well-Being Impact Their Academic Performance? So you all know, parents, that in our schools, we do work with our students to help them be able to regulate their emotions, to make sure that their emotional well-being is highlighted. But today, what Miss Ines is going to talk to you about is that connection between their emotional regulation and well-being and their academics. I also wants to just remind you that we have interpretation that's happening now simultaneously. We have Miss Patti. Thank you, Patti, for being here. She's doing interpretation in Spanish. We have Miss Bayana. She is doing interpretation in excuse me, in Arabic as well. And then if you need to turn on the interpretation, if you need this information in Arabic, you will go to your Zoom tools to interpretation, set the Russian channel. Zoom doesn't have the option for Arabic, I'm sorry. If you need this information in Spanish, go to Zoom, interpretation, and set the channel for Spanish. And with that, I will turn it over to Ines. Ines, thank you.
Hello, everyone. A little bit about me, like always. My name is Ines. So the slides say Alejandra. I'm not Alejandra. That's my supervisor. I am actually a marriage family therapy trainee, which means I'm still seeing clients, but on the side of that, I'm also doing these presentations. So in a normal setting, if we were to do this in person, I would go ahead and I would ask you, do you guys think that a child's emotional well-being is correlated or has an effect on their academic performance? And I would let you guys answer that for me. But because we are on a Zoom format, I'm actually going to go ahead and answer it myself, being that, yes, it has a lot to do. They go hand in hand for the most part. And if one is out of balance, the other one will be too. So we're going to think about it like a scale. If mental health is up here, chances are academics are all the way down here. And vice versa, if academics are maybe kind of slipping, they're getting really stressful, they're kind of looking a little funky, chances are mental health might also take a dip. So we're going to start with a couple key components. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the relationship between emotions and physical. So physical being things like your body, right? We see this one a lot with our kiddos. If you guys have ever had a kiddo who experienced bullying, who doesn't feel comfortable at school, who maybe there was a point in time during their school time where they didn't have a lot of friends, you most likely saw this student tell you, "Oh, I have a stomach ache. I'm sick. Oh, my head really hurts and I don't feel good. Can I stay home? I don't want to go to school. I want to stay home," right? So we're starting to look at that impact. The child didn't feel comfortable going to school because of whatever reason. So now they're starting to equate it to their physical health. I have a stomach ache. My head hurts. I'm sick. My eye is twitching. I feel like my shoulder really hurts because yesterday I was playing dodgeball, right? And they start to kind of connect it on their own. The other thing that we're going to look at is understanding and shaping our expectations as parents. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what are expectations that are age appropriate and what are expectations that are discipline appropriate, meaning as a parent, how are you going to kind of lay down the law, set expectation of what should be done, but in a manner that is attuned to the child's age. The other one that we're finally going to look at and overall I'm going to keep coming back to is the relationship between mental health and academic success. So again, I work both with continuation school kids and the general population. So I've seen a lot of varied experiences with how just surviving on a day-to-day basis and that mental health component can really impact the academic component. And I'll share a little bit of examples and some stories. So we're going to go to the basics, emotional health and physical health. Looking at physical health, we're looking at nutritious food. We're looking at things like shelter, sleep patterns, exercise, immunizations, and overall environment. And I say environment because for a lot of our families who may be on the lower socioeconomic, right, there could be factors, for example, like allergens, black mold in the building, anything like that, that could potentially cause a harm to a child's immune system, right? When we're looking at sleep, we're looking at sleep, and I'll give the example of the ADHD kiddos, maybe the autism spectrum kiddos. A lot of their times, their brain chemistry works overtime. So it's going to take them a lot longer to get into that process of falling asleep. So we're going to have to rely on things like taking phones away at least like 2 hours before bedtime, taking them outside, have them look at the dark sky, have them stargaze. What the brain is going to do is the brain is going to start to go, oh, it's nighttime. Maybe I should be asleep. Maybe I should go to sleep now. Because of that lack of blue light, it's going to start to connect with them, right? We're looking at options like nutritious foods. So for example, what's going to be something if your child is in sports and you need that child to have sugar for them to function, you need them to have carbs in order to get them up and running, full of energy. What's something healthy with a lot of sugars like apples, bananas that have a lot of high natural sugars? And carbs, like for example, breads, tortillas, non-bread, anything like that, that's going to be really filling for them to get them enough energy to run throughout the day or through their sports. Now, I'm going to touch on physical health with an example of some of my students. They come into school and they tell me, Miss, my stomach really hurts. And I go, why does your stomach hurt? What did you eat this morning? Well, I ate a bag of hot Cheetos and I had some tea, some Arizona tea. Okay, what did you have last night? Well, actually, it's because like I didn't sleep because I was up all night. I was like playing on a game with like my friends, and then I just woke up and I just ate that for breakfast. So then you start to see how that really starts to negatively impact them. A lot of the times they'll get the stomach ache either from the type of food they're eating, the fact that they're not getting enough nutrients from that food. For example, they can eat the whole bag of hot Cheetos, but they're still gonna be hungry, right? After eating all those calories, they're still going to feel hunger because it's not filling them for sure. So that starts to have an impact on the emotional health. If there's a student with a stomach ache because they ate an entire bag of hot Cheetos at 7:30 in the morning, they're not going to concentrate on anything being said during class. They're going to be too focused on the pain sensation that's going on in their stomach and focused on the fact that they feel uncomfortable in the moment. That's going to be something that we tend to see a lot with the students as to how the physical health starts to affect the emotional health. If you have a student who isn't going to sleep enough, who's kind of staying up at night, they're maybe kind of on the ADHD, autism spectrum, right? They're going to start to act out in class in a manner that is going to be labeled as disruptive or labeled as they're not kind of cooperating, they're not doing what they're supposed to, right? This is where you start to see a lot of like the core issues in the classrooms and in the academic settings. Another thing that we start to see in regards to emotional health, if a child comes home from school tired from the day, from the heat, they're going to be less likely to want to do their homework. And I know a lot of parents in this environment probably understand how difficult it is to get a child to sit down for 10 minutes at a table to do their homework, but it's not hard for them to go off and play a game, play with friends. They love to do that. They lose track of time with that, right? So we start to kind of see those components. So a lot of the times with managing the physical health, we start to manage the emotional health. This one's really important because for a lot of kiddos, I want to say before the age of 15, so really young up until the age of 15, they're going to really rely on the physical symptoms because they don't have the vocabulary or the communication skills to express how they feel. They're going to tell you my stomach hurts, but what they're not telling you is someone's bothering me in school, someone's bullying me, right? They're going to tell you, I have a really big headache. I don't want to go to school. Like, let me stay at home. What they might not tell you is, I'm really lonely at school and my friends aren't in my classes, and that makes me feel bad. That's why, as parents, as caregivers, and specifically as people in the field, it's really important to start looking at the physical health components as a gateway into the emotional health components. So the other important thing about this is it's kind of a two-way street. The same way physical health is the biggest way that we can kind of start to notice something about our kiddos, emotional health will also impact physical health, right? So I'll give the example of a student who was a really high achieving. She was doing sports, she was doing cheerleading, she had really good grades. She had a traumatic event happen to her, which caused her to isolate. Because she was isolating out of shame, out of guilt, out of a lot of the core concepts, because she was isolating, she stopped going to practice, she stopped seeing her friends, and she actually started kind of eating anxiously. So she would eat a lot and she tended to put on some weight. This caused her to not want to hang out with her friends even more because she felt like she was a different person and she was going to be judged. So that emotional component of the trauma that she went through had an impact on her physical well-being to the point where she was no longer doing sports, she wasn't eating nutritious foods, she started to isolate, and it started to have an impact on her body. So kind of like what I said earlier, when you're sick, when you have a headache, a lot of the times you can't really concentrate on anything else, whether it's because you're really focused on the feeling that you have or because you just don't have the energy for it, right? Same concept for the kiddos for the most part. When they're sick, they're more likely not going to succeed at school. I say this from personal experience. I was really shy about blowing my nose in class when I was sick. So I would have to leave constantly. That made me feel weird. It made me feel looked at, stared at, judged, right? So I would try my best to not go whenever I was sick, right? So for kids, especially growing up now in the environment that they kind of are, where a lot of the things can be taken, images can be uploaded onto social media, they have a bigger fear than maybe we did back in our prior generation, especially with the way bullying has kind of evolved as well, where now we don't just have the bullying in school, but we have the cyberbullying component. And that's something that really kind of scares kids a little bit more, causing more of those anxious body feelings that they might experience. So I can't really look at the chat. So if there's a really big question that someone wants answered or kind of a discussion, Alejandro, you could feel free to stop me. I'm going to move into developmentally appropriate behaviors and expectations.
Yeah, as of now, we haven't received any questions in the chat, but families, as Miss Ines has just invited you to do, if you have a question, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function to type out your question. If you're not able to type out your question, but you would still like to verbalize it, you can raise your hand on Zoom and then we can get you to unmute your device and ask the question. I'd also just like to make a quick reminder that we have both of our interpreters live and available now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you need this information in Spanish or Arabic, you can change the language in your Zoom tools. And with that, thank you, Ines, back to you.
So we're going to go a little bit into understanding development being the age and the expectation of the child based on that age, right? The same way we wouldn't expect a 1-year-old to talk, but we do expect an 8-year-old to start talking with a little bit more elaborate sentences, right? So my favorite part about being a therapist is when parents come and they say, my child doesn't do chores. They don't want to clean. They don't want to do their chores. And I say, yes, no child likes to do chores. That's an issue across cultures, across genders, across everything. There's not a child who enjoys chores. I still haven't found the one kid who likes to wash dishes. So we start to look at developmental, right? There's a certain age where they're really sweet and they're more likely to, say, "Oh, I'm gonna help you. Let me help you." And you don't miss that age until they start to turn about like 13, and all of a sudden you're the worst, right? So we're gonna look at what are abilities based on a child's age and development, right? Nowadays, children are getting a lot of really harder concepts. I remember back when I was in school, we didn't get algebra up until my freshman year of high school. I think kids are starting to get it as early as sixth, seventh grade in some schools, which kind of goes to show again, like we might say, developmentally, it's appropriate to receive Algebra 1 in freshman year of high school. But now it's getting pushed back into the middle schools. So it kind of blurs the lines a little bit, right? And as a parent, it makes it really hard to create your own rules and your own boundaries of what you want to, or what you expect from your child. The other thing that we're looking at is, are the expectations of their behavior realistic? So for example, again, if I have a 10-year-old, is washing the dishes after school something that's realistic for him? More than often it can be if I have to remind him. If I have to tell him when he gets in the car, when you get home, you're going to wash dishes and do your homework. That's completely normal behavior for a 10-year-old, completely normal expectations. However, if I was to tell a 6-year-old, Mijo, you're gonna wash dishes when you get home, chances are the 6-year-old is gonna forget, they might have some trouble, or they might make a mess and that might stress me out even more. So we start to look at certain things like this. Same with academics. At what point is it appropriate to your child and their age to know certain things and to be able to do certain things academically? So for example, at what age should you, as the parent, stop helping your child with their homework? And I bring this up because it really depends on the child and their personality as well. Some children need to have the parent sitting there looking at them until they finish what they're doing, where other children are going to be a little bit more independent. They're going to be able to get it done a lot quicker and without having that supervision, right? Something else, there is a little bit of a gender dynamic with this, where we tend to see that girls tend to adhere to certain behaviors and certain expectations a little bit better than boys do. Before I switch, actually, something else that I wanted to point out. If you know that your child is capable of doing something that is appropriate to their age, a way to really get them to do it a lot more often. So, for example, washing the dishes after coming home and before doing homework. A really good technique that we teach parents is to praise the child, right? So you're going to praise the child. Thank you so much. I really love when you do dishes. It really helps me out. You're working so hard. I see all the hard work that you do. It really helps me out. Now, the thing is that when the behavior isn't being done, so for example, you tell them, can you wash the dishes? And let's say they throw a fit. Let's say they start yelling at you. They start screaming. Why do I have to do it? It's always me. I'm tired too. Right? Let's say they start, let's be honest, they're going to start like that, right? Let's say that comes up. As a parent, you're going to ignore the behavior. You're going to turn around, go do something else. You're going to ignore it. You're not going to pay attention to it and you're not going to acknowledge it. The most important thing I could tell you is you're not going to fight back, because at the end of the day, you're the parent, you're the control. So you're not going to fight back. You're going to walk away. Chances are they're going to continue to scream because they want the attention. They want you to turn around and fight back. You're going to walk away. You're going to do something else. If they do wash the dishes after throwing the tantrum, you're going to come back and say, thank you so much. I really love when you follow through with what is expected. I really appreciate that. You did so good. Thank you so much. Yes, I see a hand.
Yes, that's my hand. I have a question.
Yes.
I think we've discussed this before, but I'd love to hear your answer again. Um, I as a parent struggle with that. Inez, in particular because maybe it's because of the way that I was raised and different parenting styles. But when I was told to do something, I did it, and I didn't get a thank you or anything like that. So with my daughter, when she was growing up, if I told her I need you to clean her room and she would do it, I didn't thank her or really praise her for every thing that she did because it was an expectation. So where's the balance, I guess, that I'm asking between this is my expectation of you, or um, really kind of giving her that positive reinforcement with that praise? When is too much, I guess, is my question.
So this is this is actually another favorite question that I get. My favorite thing to hear is when people tell me, I'm not gonna praise my kid, it's gonna spoil them. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, so you don't want what's best for your child. Um, and I say this because coming myself from a Hispanic culture, I also wasn't raised to receive positive feedback. There's an expectation that I do X, Y, and Z, and it's my job to do it, no ifs, ands, or buts. But what we tend to see now, for example, as someone who was raised in that environment, it's really difficult for me to accept compliments from others. And that's something that I notice within myself. And that's something that I notice within my clients as well, is my dad never praised me. My mom never said thank you. My parents don't know how to apologize. I've never had an I'm sorry, things like that. And when you compliment these individuals, they freeze. They don't know how to accept, and they also don't know how to acknowledge their hard work. So this starts to create some issues for a lot of people, and it kind of varies. Later on in adulthood, I have had some clients that notice that they struggle with self-worth, for example, in the sense that they have this expectation of themselves and they actually place it a lot higher so that when they don't achieve it, it really takes an impact on their self-worth. There's other clients who I've had within the teenage realms who have a lot of resentment, especially when they start to hang out with other kids and they start to see other parent dynamics, right? So there is a really thin line in terms of we have to confront kind of our own generational trauma in a way of my parents never said sorry, my parents never said thank you, my parents never did that. But is this what I would want to continue with my kids? And it also doesn't have to be excessive. It could be for really big accomplishments, right? So maybe not cleaning the room, but if you don't want to directly praise the person, you can praise the effort. So praising the effort in the sense of, for example, if your child really struggles with homework, I see that you're working really hard. I see that you're trying your best. I see that you're really putting in the effort. You're really taking the time out of your day. You're not directly praising the person, but you're praising what they're doing. And what they're doing is what you want them to do. So you're praising the behavior that you want in the long run. So Alejandro in that example is, oh, I see that you're really clean. I see that you're really organized. They start to think, yeah, I'm a clean person. I'm really organized, right? You're not praising them, you're praising what you want.
Okay, thank you for that. In the chat, we had Linda that said, my daughter does not finish her chores unless I ask her.
I'm gonna be honest, sometimes my mom still has to tell me what to do.
Why?
So sometimes that doesn't go away. Something else that I tend to tell parents with, depending on the age range, a lot of the times you have to break things down into smaller groups. For example, I will have parents who say, well, they know that their expectation is to clean the bathroom, the kitchen, and sweep and mop, and then clean out the dog poop, and then on top of that, give the dog a bath on the weekends. And I'm like, that's a lot of information right off the bat. I'm like, just kind of break it down by day or by week. It's Monday, take out the trash. It's the weekend, go wash the dog. It's Wednesday and Friday and Sunday, dog poop comes out. I'm like, just kind of do one to three commands for it to be a little bit more easier. And another thing too is when you say it, have the child repeat it to you. That way you both are held accountable. I told you this and you repeated it to me, so we're both on the same page. There's no excuses. So this one is another interesting one. Scolding children for being messy. I'm starting to look at, again, is it developmentally appropriate based on the child's age, the purpose of the behavior, and looking at the patterns? So I say developmentally appropriate, right? Is it okay for a 5-year-old to see a puddle and want to jump in it versus a 16-year-old who goes to jump in it, right? What's the reasoning behind wanting to jump in it? What's the age? And is it something that's consistent? The other thing is, was the child trying to do something with that experience? Is the child trying to gain independence? Are they exploring boundaries? Exploring boundaries, sorry for parents, can also mean exploring limits. At what point will my mom lose it? At what point will my dad get mad and start yelling at me? So they're kind of pushing boundaries in terms of pushing boundaries with parents and limits. At what point will I get yelled at versus at what point will I get my phone taken away, right? So, for example, we could think of it this way in terms of exploring boundaries. What will make my mom yell at me, right? Is it me yelling back? Is it me not doing my chores? Is it me bringing home back grades? Versus which of these actions will get my phone taken away and make me realize I have to stop, right? So a lot of the times, teens specifically will do this exploring boundaries and pushing limits just to see how far they can take it, right? The other one is, was the child making unhealthy choices? So similar to before, a lot of the times they do bad behavior because it's their way of getting attention. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad attention. Attention is attention. So we have to kind of, as parents, see, am I going to acknowledge the bad behavior and give the child attention? Or am I going to ignore it and then come back and praise the behavior that I do want? Finally, the last component is safety. I also get asked this a lot. If I'm ignoring the behavior and my child starts to bang their head on the wall, they start to throw themselves on the floor, then what do I do? And I always tell them the child is playing you. They know that by pushing your limits into having you think that there's going to be physical injury, you're going to go and save them. So in order for the redirecting to really work, you have to be okay with knowing that your child can potentially face a consequence of their own action, right? If they're going to misbehave to the point of hitting their head into the wall, that could potentially be a consequence. Now, if it gets to the point where the self-harm is life-threatening, then intervention is going to be needed. But as parents, I'm pretty sure you guys know your children best in terms of what their personal limits are. So ways that we can kind of start to educate ourselves, right? What should my child know or not know based on their age, right? When you have the really little ones, they start to kind of explore a lot of the, again, the body sensations. What is this? They might see you cutting fruit. Can I help? Can I do this? Can I do that? Right? They want to really explore being independent, the little ones. With the older ones, they want to explore independence in a way that is very private to themselves, right? They're going to be more on their phone. They're going to want to explore their friendships. They're going to explore their identities. You might see the middle schoolers and the high schoolers really kind of start to experiment with friends, with the way they might dress, kind of looking for that identity component. Also, again, look at, are my expectations of the behavior appropriate? Is it appropriate to expect straight A's, let's say from a senior in high school versus a kindergartner, right? So what's going to be age appropriate? But at the same time, is it going to be appropriate for, let's say, a middle schooler to get in a fight versus a third grader? And what is the fight about? How was the fight taking place, right? Is it a fight between friends where they have a falling out, or is it a physical altercation? So starting to look at, are those expectations appropriate for the age? And is the child failing to meet a milestone? So we tend to see a lot of the milestones with the really little ones first, but the older ones also tend to have milestones. So for example, isolation from friends or friend groups is a really big one that we sometimes don't talk about. That tends to occur within the middle school going into high school. And that one can have a really big impact on self-esteem, image of oneself, and just their ability to have that social emotional component. So ways that you can kind of find out more about this, you can go to a pediatrician, have some discussions with the teachers within the school site, maybe administration. Again, therapists like myself and my colleagues are trained within Children in Mind specifically. I specifically work a lot with children and also information from other parents. Now, this is the part where we start to get into the emotional health and the academic success. So we talked a lot about the body, a lot about expectations based on age. We're going to start to look at the mental health and the academic success component. So like I said, they tend to be pretty enmeshed. What I mean by they tend to be enmeshed is if I'm someone who is undergoing a lot of trauma, a lot of stress in the home, right, chances are I'm not going to have the capacity to focus on school. And I could give the example of, let's say, I'm someone and I'm seeing that my parents are going through a really hard financial time. I might be stressed about it. I might be trying to figure out ways to help them, ways to decrease my spending as their kid, right? Or their spending or lack of spending might impact me as well. I might not have enough food in the morning. I might feel embarrassed when I talk to my friends and they don't have that issue. And that starts to take a toll on my academic success. So just some quick statistics. The first one notes that students who participate in programs that look at social and emotional learning components, often find that their grades are a lot higher. So basically what this means is it's not just focusing on English, language, math, and science. It's also focusing on what it means to be a safe person, what it means to create a safe environment for other people. These students tend to outscore other students by 11%. The other thing is that there has been documented efforts that positive efforts in social and emotional learning programs on students from diverse backgrounds really has a strong impact on them as well. This being said is as if, for example, someone has a Hispanic background coming into a school that focuses on that social and emotional component are going to feel more welcome because the other students are going to be more understanding of their situation, right? The other thing that they notice is that interventions that strengthen students' social, emotional, and decision-making skills also positively impact their academic achievement. So the same way that other students are going to be more understanding of, let's say, students from a low-income background, students who are really struggling, those same students are also going to be really understanding of themselves. And I'll give you guys an example that I tend to see with like my 9 to 15-year-olds. A student who doesn't participate in social emotional learning might say, "Ah, I'm so dumb. I'm so stupid." And they told me this in session. They go, "Miss, I'm really stupid. Like I hate myself sometimes," right? They're really hard on themselves and they have a lot of negative self-talk. But when you start to foster that sense of emotional learning that's catered around social components, they're able to really switch it. And they don't go, "I'm really stupid." They start to go, "Oh, I just made a mistake. Whatever. I'm gonna fix it." They don't go, "Sometimes I hate myself, miss. I can't stand myself," right? They might go, "Sometimes I'm annoying, but like I feel like everyone is." So you start to see that that influence on the social emotional learning influences their own thinking about themselves. So they're less negative to themselves and they start to have a brighter outlook about themselves. What this ends up doing is it fosters a better self or a better sense of self-esteem, right? They go from kind of hating themselves to liking themselves and being more understanding of their mistakes and their experiences. This ends up being really good in school because whenever they make a mistake, they're not going to blame teachers. They're not going to blame other students, but they're also not going to blame themselves. They're going to be more understanding and they're going to say, okay, maybe I need to fix this. I need to go back and look at it. Something went wrong somewhere. I got to figure it out. But they're not going to be mad at themselves about it. So a little bit more statistics following up, looking at specifically the children from 13 to 18, looking at those who suffer from mental illness are more likely to earn failing grades across all subjects. So again, tend to work with kids in a community school. So community school means it's kind of like their last opportunity. And this is the age range that's from middle school to high school. And children who tend to have a higher mental health diagnosis. So let's say depression and anxiety, PTSD, ADHD, bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 disorder. A lot of the times they might not get the help that they need at home. They might be struggling, for example, someone with ADHD who maybe they like medication, but they can't afford medication. They might be struggling to pay attention, to really focus, to kind of fall asleep at night. Someone with bipolar disorder might have issues with making friends because one week you feel really good, you're great, and then the next week when you start to present with manic symptoms, you might start to lash out at your friends and you kind of start to isolate yourself because of that, right? So when your core components, remember, this age group is all about friendships and it's all about identity. So when your core component of feeling like you belong is tested and destroyed, it starts to impact everything else. And then for the sake of time, I'm going to skip that one, but it starts to impact everything else in the form of, like I said earlier, for the younger kids, they start to miss school. They don't want to show up. They're going to miss school a lot more. They're going to say they're sick, their stomach hurts. They don't want to be there. There's also the concentration component. If I feel like I didn't get enough to eat this morning, but money is really tight in the family and I have to wait until lunch, I'm not going to be able to concentrate because I'm hungry, right? There's also the aspect of completion. If I don't understand what's being said, and let's say my parents don't have an education above high school, right? I can't really go and ask them for help. That starts to put me a little bit behind, and I start to feel bad about that. I might feel embarrassed. I might feel guilty. I might feel sad for them, right? I also might feel pressured. Pressured in the sense of I need to be the person in my family who graduates because my parents didn't have a chance to. So we start to look at things like pressures, things like time frames, multiple tasks. We see this transition from specifically sophomore year into junior year that there's issues with managing more tasks, more homework, more things are required, especially for college applications. Kids start to have a really hard time with managing everything at once. Also handling negative feedback from other people in the sense of from teachers, from other students. Things like corrections on essays might cause one student to have a really hard time admitting that they need to fix something. And they might go into like a blaming mentality. So these are just some things that we tend to see more specifically with, I want to say, as early as fourth grade, up until high school. Anxiety tends to be the most prevalent one with the students in regards to mental health and academics. It tends to be the phobia of feeling like you don't have friends or you feel isolated, and also the anxiety of feeling like you might be bullied or hurt at school. That's some of the anxieties that we tend to see the most with our really high achieving students. So students who are, let's say, in like the super advanced classes, or they might be enrolled in college credit courses. We see anxiety surrounding imposter syndrome. So feeling like they're not enough, feeling like they need to do everything, like there's never enough time, like they're really stressed. Anxiety tends to be the one that we see the most in all kids all populations. And again, anxiety is going to be the stomach aches, the headaches, the tingling in the body is a really big one. And tingling to feel numb, feeling like their chest hurts. These are going to be the really common physical signs. Anxiety also shows up with kids in the form of test taking, feeling like they're sweating, like they can't concentrate on something, like it's really hard for them to pay attention during a test or any class. The next one that we have is depression. So I'm gonna explain a little bit how sometimes depression and anxiety work. A lot of the times, anxiety is gonna stop the kids from doing what they want to do. They might be too scared to ask their friends to hang out. They might feel judged if they ask a friend for help on something. And because they're not doing what they want to do, they start to feel really bad, really sad, really upset. That's where the depression comes in. The depression is going to be feeling like you're not living your life to the fullest or like you're holding back. So that's why we tend to see the anxiety come first and the depression follow right after. For a lot of our other students who are also tend to be like on the lower aspect of academics, a lot of the times, depression can come from the sense of feeling like things are outside of their control. They might feel like they have no control over parents' finances, over where they live, over how they dress, what they have to eat. And they start to feel really upset about it, really low. They might lack energy with it, right? They might have very like cold affect. A physical sign of depression that you might be able to see in your kids is if they start to sleep a lot. So if they start oversleeping, and I mean like 10 to 12 hours, that could be a sign of depression. Other signs of depression can be linked to eating, right? Overeating, undereating, increased weight, decreased weight, changes in eating pattern, and again, the isolation component. If it was someone who was really into having a lot of friends and suddenly they're isolated, it could be a sign. So of course, we're going to go into some of the more higher risk behaviors that we tend to see, right? Suicidality being one of them, where we have seen a significant rise in conversations regarding suicide with teens. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be committing suicide, but they're starting to think about it a lot more. And it's starting to happen as early as, I believe, third to fourth grade. Kids are starting to get kind of that idea. Now, the conversation might be a little bit differently per kiddo, but it might kind of start off with the idea of, I don't see myself going to high school, or I don't really see myself past the age of 20. It could also be, sometimes I just want to go to sleep and I just don't want to wake up from sleep, right? So little components like that start to kind of give it away. The other one is substance use disorders. Again, we're seeing an increase as early as fourth grade with substance use disorders, where it could be that they know someone. Bathrooms are typically the places where they're finding it the most, and it typically starts with things like pens, vapes, anything like that. The traditional one that I'm pretty sure our generation is used to, which is like raiding parents' alcohol cabinets, things like that. But something very important to know about substance use disorders from these kiddos is that a lot of the times they're using it as a way to medicate. So they don't know what to do with the anxiety in their body, with the depression that they're feeling. They want it to go away. So for them, it's kind of like if I take an Advil, my pain is going to go away. So if I hit a pen, this pain is going to go away. So for them, it's more of a self-medicating component. So substance tends to be very tricky with its age range. And then of course we have other components like attention disorders, right? Which is like the ADHDs, autism being another neurological disorder, so a disorder in the brain, and how it just makes it really hard to focus, really hard to feel like you belong, and it creates emotional outburst, right? So these components are really sensitive to like anger, really sensitive to judgment. And we as people, we as quote unquote normal people, might not react by hitting another kid in the head with a water bottle, right? But someone with, let's say, ADHD or on the autism spectrum might not know how to regulate that emotion. And that might be their body reaction, not their mind reaction, but their body reaction. So, how can we start to foster the feeling of success for these kiddos, specifically in an academic setting, right? We just saw a long list of how all of these things can impact their grades and their academic performance, but how can we start to change that, right? The first thing we start to look at is their ability to feel capable. If they feel like they're incapable of doing a homework assignment, of participating in class, chances are they're just not going to continue to do it. We've been seeing a rise in kids just kind of giving up. It's been really common and popular for them to say, I didn't get it the first time, so I just gave up. And you're kind of like, oh, that quick. So something that we're also noticing is kids begin to compare themselves at a very young age, and they start to notice the difference between themselves, right? We might get this in the form of our kids saying, yeah, today at school, my friend Sarah, she's really good at like math and I'm really good at art. So they're already starting to compare themselves and their worth. Sarah's good at math, I'm not. I'm good at art, Sarah's not, right? I didn't know the answer to the question when the teacher asked, but everyone else knew, right? That starts to create some self-doubt about themselves. There's also kids who feel like they're not smart enough, especially when they start to fall behind and it starts to impact their emotional health, and that starts to impact their social relationships, right? So a lot of the times we have to kind of redefine what being smart is. And this is something that I'm guilty of as well too. When we see kiddos and we go, oh, you're so smart, right? They start to have this idea and they start to doubt themselves when they're not capable of doing something. Well, my mom says I'm smart, but like I can't get this to work. So maybe I'm not smart, right? And again, it goes back to the praise component. You want to praise based on what they're doing. It's not, oh, you're so smart. It's you're trying really hard. It's not, wow, like this is so beautiful. It's amazing. I really loved all the colors that you used in it. It's very creative, right? So really focusing on what they're doing rather than what the outcome is. So we're going to talk a little bit about the need to belong and feel equal, especially in school settings. So for kids, a lot of the times they kind of start to think, if I can't succeed in academics, then I don't belong here, right? And again, we see this example with the bullying. I don't fit in with this group of friends, so I don't want to be here. I'm going to have a stomach ache and I'm going to stay home, right? Kids will often excel and stand out in order to compensate, right? What this mean is, again, being like the dumb kid in class. If you know that your grades aren't good and you need to find out a way to start making friends, right? You might be the class clown. You could be the bully. You could start to pick on others just to kind of get that attention going, right? So what's the alternative to this so that we can kind of reduce these behaviors, right? A lot of the times it's kind of telling kids, well, not telling kids, at least for us as parents, it's knowing that when kids start to misbehave, they actually have a fear. It's the idea that I need to make fun of this person first before they make fun of me. So if you guys do have kids and your kids are the ones who are, the reason why you're getting a lot of the school phone calls, you might have a lot of trouble with that student, just know that it's that child's way of protecting themselves. So depending on how you go about that, it's going to be a little bit different depending on your child's needs and your child's kind of vulnerability. In terms of discipline, it's looking at, are you going to discipline or punish the child? And is there a better alternative, right? So first, you have to really look at the root of the behavior. Where is this behavior coming from? Is it coming from the child being insecure? Or is it coming from something that they picked up from their friends, right? And at that point, we have to start to look at what is discipline and what is punishment. So my favorite example is when parents take phones away. That one seems to really work wonders for a lot of the students, because one, it's a good way for you guys to know if it's the child that's causing the issue or if it's the friend group. And I say this because oftentimes when parents take away phones, it disconnects the child from that friend group. And then you start to kind of see, oh, maybe it was my child because the behavior is still going. Or other times it's, oh, like I took their phone away and they're not talking to this group of people. And all of a sudden there's no more issues, right? So that's a really good start if you have a child who does have a phone or is a phone age, right? The other thing is telling the child the consequences. So just flat out telling them, if you continue to do this, I'm gonna remove this. I'm gonna cancel this. I'm gonna take away this and let them know I'm gonna say it one time. And if I get another phone call or if I see it happen again, I'm not gonna warn you, it's just gonna happen, right? So again, we're looking at discipline. Discipline in the sense of your actions have real-time consequences, and I'm gonna let you know and I'm gonna communicate with you. But if it keeps happening, I'm taking it away, right? So remember, you guys are the parents, you guys have the control. If you're a parent who, for example, might say, well, I'm not the one who pays the phone bill, I don't have control of that. You can discipline in other ways, right? If you have a student who loves to have their clothing ironed every single day, they like to be fully ironed, right? Don't iron their clothes. Don't let them use the dryer machine, right? Take away little things like that. If they, for example, like a specific type of food and they tell you, oh, I only want you to cook chicken and rice, cook what you want, right? Don't cater it to them in that way. So there's little forms of discipline that could be done every day. But again, more importantly, we're going to be looking at the whole picture for academic success in the sense of, is my child getting anxiety because they don't understand the material? Or is my child getting anxiety because of something going on in the home, going on in the environment, going on with their friend group, and really starting to kind of notice that difference? So again, some tips is listening for the clues. I give a lot of examples of how to listen to a lot of the clues in terms of, is your child being overwhelmed? Are they having difficulty, right? Or is your child just not interested in school? Is your child someone who maybe doesn't want college? Maybe they want to trade, they want to trade school, they just want to go into the field, right? And start looking at the problem areas. So again, starting to distinguish, is this something to do with their self-esteem? Are they getting bullied? Is it their friend group? Is the material that they're learning just too hard for them, right? Is it too complicated? Do they need a tutor, right? And just kind of starting to break it down like that, kind of doing um, just kind of like little check marks, right? If you have a child that's talking age and they can communicate, just talking to your child, hey, how was school? What are your friends like? What's your favorite thing to do with your friends, right? Do you have a favorite class? Why is it your favorite? Do you have a least favorite class? What makes it not be your favorite? Is it the teacher? Is it the students? Is it the material? Right. And more than anything, again, with praise, looking at their areas of strength. If you have a child that went from an F to a C in class, really focusing on the hard work that they did to get that grade up. Wow, I'm really impressed with how you managed to get your grade up. You worked really hard, right? Maybe not praising them directly, but just kind of being like, oh, you worked really hard. Did you want to get ice cream? And rewarding those behaviors in little ways. Wow, I noticed that you got your grade up to a C. You know what? I'm gonna make your favorite food today, right? Just little things. More than anything, specifically for the little ones, looking at organization in terms of every day that you get home from school, don't throw your backpack, don't throw your shoes, right? Make sure I do have some kids that when you open their backpack, everything is just crumpled up, right? And I also have kids where every paper is nice and stacked. So also starting to look at, is it organized to the child? Is the child able to find something in that organized mess? And if the answer is no, then something needs to be changed. But if the child is able to pull it up from their organized mess and it's organized to them, then that's their way of kind of handling things. Time management. So again, with homework, Does this child require you to sit down at the table and stare at them until they do their homework for 20 minutes, or are they able to do it on their own? Looking at level of concentration, are they actually thinking about it, or are they just kind of staring at the paper? And if they are staring at the paper, do they need my help? Do they need a tutor? Do they need something to get them to actually focus? Do they need music in the background? What's going on that they need? And finally, motivation. Motivation in the sense of is if this doesn't get finished, you're not playing with your Legos. If you can't turn this in when it's due, you're not going to go play sports, right? Starting to really look at their motivation for finishing things. I
Ines,
believe we
I
would have
think,
this question.
yeah,
Yeah.
this gives us, this is a really good segue into discussion. First, Ines, thank you for this fantastic presentation, just full of information to help us. As you saw, I asked a question as well, even to kind of help my own parenting. I have an adult child now. She's not a child. She is 19, going to be 20 years old, but I'm still navigating what that looks like now that she's an adult. So thank you. I'd like to open it up for the last couple of minutes for our families, if there are any questions. Okay, seeing that there's no questions, what I'd like to do, Ines, if it's okay with you, I'm going to share my screen. We did get a question in the chat a little while ago that asked about the slides, if we can get a copy of the slides. I know you've already sent to me the slides, but families, just so that you're aware, we post all of the recordings and the slides on our albertschools.org website. So if you go to albertschools.org, under departments, educational services, you have family engagement. Oops, excuse me, I moved over. And down here it says webinar recordings. So here we have all of the recordings that we've done this academic school year. My goodness, we've had a lot of good dialogues. The last one we had was asthma and allergy. So if you missed that, click it. You have the English recording here, Spanish recording here, and then importantly, you'll have the slide deck. And that is in every single one where we have the slide decks available. So that's available for you to have access now. And then just as a final reminder, we have the next few weeks are going to really round up our school year and close off with these dialogues. So I'd like to just give you reminders of the upcoming dialogue. So here we are. This is April 9th, How Emotional Health Impacts Academic Progress. Thank you, Inez. Next week on Wednesday, we have support for students on the autism spectrum. So if you have a child on the autism spectrum, you're curious about that, please join us. It's going to be with our experts in our special education department. Then we'll have support for students with dyslexia, managing stress and anger in yourself and your child. Ines, that's with you as well, correct? We'll see you then. We have multiculturalism and Vision 2030. And then importantly, to finish off the school year, we're going to be discussing how do you help your child transition from elementary to middle school? It's a big jump for kids. And then how do you help them jump from middle school to high school? And those will be facilitated by actually four, because two each discussion of our counselors here in Alvord. So families, we just want to say thank you for spending some time with us. I know I say it every single session, but I think it bears repeating that even though it's just 1 hour that you spend with us, 30 minutes here, 15 minutes there, over the course of your child's academic career, 13 years, 14 years if they go to TK, and even longer if they go to preschool, all of that really adds up. So thank you for spending some time with us and even building your capacity to support your children. We have a question that isn't related to these sessions. It's just when are graduations. Graduations, you can check for your child's school specific date at your child's front office, but I believe they are all the week of May 26th for the high schools and the middle schools. Yeah, so actually I have it here. The alternative high schools is the 22nd of May. La Sierra High School is the 28th of May. Hillcrest High School is the 29th, and Norte Vista is the 27th. For the promotions, I would say reach out to your child's principal and they'll be able to tell you. And with that, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a good night. Patricia, Bayana, thank you so much. Bye, Inez. Have a good night.